Hello and welcome to this week's episode of the Veg Grower Podcast. My name's Richard and I want to encourage and inspire you to grow more of your own food in whatever space you have available. And I do this by sharing what I've been up to in my own allotment, my own vegetable garden, after 30 years of growing my own food. But I still learn something new every single day. Now, this week, it's been a bit overwhelming. We're going into summer, beginning of July is here, and everything is feeling on top of myself. And that's something I'm going to be talking about towards the end of this podcast. We, of course, have our seed of the month as well. But before that, I've got an exciting project that I've started here in the vegetable garden. Well, I'm sat here in my vegetable garden, and as I'm looking across my vegetable garden, I'm watching this little blackbird sitting on one of my coop nets with a mouth full of something or another. I can't quite see what it is, but it seems very happy. One of the things I've been doing over this last week is making sure that our bird feeders and waterers are always full. This is a pretty easy thing to do, really. It doesn't take too long. But the reason I think this is so important is it helps deal with pests. By encouraging these birds into our garden, they're going to help deal with our pests. Now, it's true, they do help themselves to nibbling on our brassicas, maybe a few of our raspberries and tayberries as well, but I will take that. We're still getting plenty of soft fruits and other vegetables for ourselves, so it's not the end of the world. Now, of course, it has been a lot of hard work at the moment, trying to keep on top of everything. The weeds are growing like mad, watering in the allotment as well. But something I've done this week, which has been a really big investment, but something I think is going to pay up, is I've got myself and pot up a brand new potting shed. Now, this potting shed, it's basically a greenhouse cum shed. It's got large windows on the front and side to allow in as much light as possible. And last time I bought a shed, I had a lot of trouble with it. I ordered it online, it arrived, it was missing bits, and I to-ing and fro-ing with the company to try and get it sorted. It was a bit of a nightmare, and I was always hesitant about buying another shed for that very reason. Well, I searched the internet and I came across a company called Power Sheds, and I'm actually going to get these on the podcast soon. I was really happy with the price that I paid for the shed and the quality the shed has turned up in. Everything is tongue and groove. It's not slats of wood that's so thin. It's like fence panels. This is proper, solid tongue and groove. Really well thought out, gone together really well. Service was exceptional. Everything's turned up on time as I ordered. But it was a lot of work, as I'm sure you can imagine. First of all, I had to remove the shed that I bought 10 years ago. Now, this shed, it became a bit of a dumping ground. I bought it because I wanted it to be somewhere to store tools and what have you, and it done that quite well. But what had happened, over the 10 years or so that I've had it, it started to deteriorate. The wood was not very good quality. It was just a rubbish shed, to be honest with you, and it was looking awful. So my idea was I would empty it, which I've been doing throughout the week, take it down and then move it down the allotment. Well, as I was taking down the old shed, it crumbled. It was not possible to salvage much from it. So I've decided that's going in the bin. Not what I wanted to do. As you know, I don't like waste, but sometimes these things happen. There's no way I could rescue that shed, so it has gone in the bin. With that area cleared, I had to level it out using some of our pebbles from our driveway. We're getting rid of our driveway. It's being resurfaced in the next couple of weeks. So I had to make sure that that area, all those pebbles, well, I thought I'll put them to use, put them underneath this shed. I've, of course, added concrete and stuff like that to make sure it is level. The gravel, the pebbles, is there more for drainage to make sure it's not sitting on water. But anyway, we've got the base level. And the shed turned up on a pallet, and we built the shed throughout Friday and Saturday. It was a lot of work, but I'm really happy with it. It's 8 foot by 6 foot, which I'm really happy with. Door towards the back. I went for a double door because a single door sometimes can be a bit too small, so I went for a double door. Even though the old shed was meant to be the same size, the newer one was bigger, much bigger, and a little bit daunting in some ways, but I'm happy with it because it's given me plenty of room inside. It doesn't feel so squashed in. Now, the idea with this shed is that it's going to be for propagation. So I'm going to start a lot of my seeds off in there. We're going to pot up a potting table. It's got a couple of shelves already in there underneath the windows, which will let in plenty of light. On those shelves, I'm placing my autopot starter trays, seed trays. They will get off to a good start as well. We're going to have a potting bench and grow lights. And all my seed sowing propagation is going to be going on inside this shed. I'm really happy with it to say the least, and it's going to give me somewhere really nice to work in, but also somewhere I can be really organised and sort of really think about, I can sow seeds here, I can move them along and get them in a decent position. I used to, many years ago, had a greenhouse cum shed thing in the middle of my garden, and it's kind of replacing that in a similar vein. Really happy with it, really happy with it. I know I keep saying that, but I'm really happy with this shed. Now, about 5 years ago, I did build a shed from scratch, and that's my 8 foot by 8 foot shed down the bottom of my garden. That shed, I've got to say, is still standing. When I built it, I had such a good time building it. I really enjoyed building that shed. It cost me half as much as the shed that I've bought now, but wood was a bit cheaper back then. The reason I didn't build a shed is because of the windows. I couldn't figure out how I could build the windows, and the time involved as well. It's a lot of time, and you need a lot of space to build a shed. So I compromised and brought this shed from Power Sheds, but really happy with it. There's something about a shed that really fills me with joy. Now, as I said, this is all intended to be somewhere to sow seeds, so that I'm not taking up so much space in the kitchen anymore. It's going to be bit of a change, but I can see us doing really well with it. I cannot speak how happy I am with my new shed. Now, of course, as I said, because it is somewhere to sow seeds, we're going to be sowing some fennel seeds in just a moment as our seed of the month. Before that, let's find out what's been going on in the Supporters Club this week. Hey, well, if you are enjoying this podcast so far, then please do leave us a rate and review on your podcast provider. It only takes you a few seconds, but it means the world to us. It helps us get found by more people who might also be interested in learning a bit more about how to grow their own food. But not only that, if you want to help keep this podcast running, then please consider becoming a member of the Veg Grower Podcast Supporters Club. Now, the Supporters Club is set up in a way that it just pays for things like the running of the website, which is essential to keep this podcast running. But I don't just take your money, I believe in giving something back. And what I've set up is a way that each month you would pay me £5 a month automatically when you become a member. But in return, you get access to extra behind the scenes podcasts, which give you a bit more of an idea what's going on here at the Veg Grower Podcast HQ. Added to that, you also once a month receive our seed collection. Now, this seed collection contains a collection of seeds that can be sown in that very month, and it also comes with our mini newspaper. Now, in my opinion, for £5 a month, I think that is an absolute bargain. But as an example, one of the seeds that we've sown over this last week, because we try and spread them out throughout the month, is chard. Now, chard is a wonderful vegetable to grow, a leafy green that grows in most conditions. It can be overwintered, and it is absolutely delicious, and it looks stunning in the allotment as well. So for £5 a month, I do think you're getting a bargain. But if it is something you would be interested in just signing up to, then please head to the veggrowerpodcast.co.uk. Right, with that, let's get back to the gardening. Well, here I am inside my new potting shed. I can't believe how happy this shed has made me. However, it is time for our seed of the month. And it seems like the perfect opportunity to test out this shed for what it's intended for, and that is a propagation shed. Somewhere I can sow seeds and grow them on, and then hopefully get them growing into a decent condition before they go outside. And one of those seeds that we're going to be sowing today is our seed of the month, bulb fennel. Now you might be thinking, well, I've heard of fennel before, and what's the difference between bulb fennel and herb fennel? Bulb fennel is also known as Florence fennel, and it is grown for the bulbs. It's not the foliage, it's not the herb, it's for the bulbs. Now they are quite flavourful. They're quite an aniseed flavour. I have to admit I'm not keen on aniseed, but these are a good thing to sow at this time of year if you are looking for something to sow. And what you can actually sow these from is from late spring to midsummer, so May to July. And this just means that they're less likely to bolt in colder weather. What I have, however, done in the past is I've sown them and grown them from seed. I've left them in the pot to grow, and they've came back year after year after year. So they are a pretty good plant to grow for that reason. Now to sow, I just simply sow these directly where they are to grow, about 1 centimetre deep in the soil, in rows sort of 30 centimetres apart. And once they are sown, once they're germinated, we do need to thin them to about 20 to 25 centimetres of space between each plant. Now, I say they are to sow where they are to grow. That is because the roots generally do not like being disturbed. I have grown them in pots, and they can be sown directly in the pots, as already mentioned, or they can be sown directly in the soil in your beds, wherever you may want them to grow. I'm doing these in pots. Now I will be starting these off in pots and then potting them out a little bit later on once they are large enough. The only reason I'm starting these off in pots is because I do not like direct sowing anything. My garden, my allotment is too weedy to tell what is a weed seed and what is the actual plant. So I like to sow mines where I can in pots to plant them out. And all I'm doing is one single seed in the pot, about 1 centimetre deep as already mentioned. We'll wait for them to germinate. Plug plant trainers are just as good as well. And once they're germinated, they will end up being potted on into pots until they are large enough to go outside directly in the soil where they are to grow. Now, what we find with Florence Fennel is that it does like quite a sunny spot, but it does need a bit of shelter from the winds. It can get quite a large plant, so they do need a little bit of shelter just to stop them from blowing over. They do like some well-drained, fertile soil. So if you haven't prepared your soil, add plenty of organic compost or well-rotted manure before sowing or before growing. And then all you've got to do once they are planted, once they are growing, is just ensure the soil is consistently moist. Drought can actually bring on the bulb to bolt and produce a flower, which isn't what we want. But I find if we keep the soil consistently moist, which is very difficult at the moment, granted, they will grow really, really well. Every few weeks it's worth feeding them with a good high potash liquid feed such as Tomato Right, which sounds crazy, but it does work quite well for causing these bulbs to swell. And what you can also do as they grow, it's worth just earthing up the bulbs as they swell just to cover and blanch them a little bit better, and that just keeps the bulbs from going too tough. They stay tender. Now you can harvest the bulbs when they are about 7 to 10 centimetres in diameter, and that's usually about 12 to 14 weeks. So here we are, beginning of July sowing these, end of June, beginning of July. By the time we harvest these, we will be looking towards the end of October, November time. So, they're going to keep us going for quite a while. Like I said, I have left them in pots and they've grown back year after year. That might be something you want to do, but I cannot guarantee it will work. It's just something that I've done in the past and seems to have worked. So there you go. It's really easy to grow this month's seed of the month. You will find links, of course, to some of our suppliers for these particular type of seeds if you are interested in growing them. I highly recommend you give it a try and let me know how you get on. Now, Chef Scott will be here next week with a recipe including Florence Fennel or bulb fennel. I have to admit, he chose this month's seed of the month, so I'm excited to see what he comes up with. Talking of Chef Scott, let's go find out what he's got for us this week.
Chopping all the veggies, sizzle in the air. Chef Scott with the magic, smells are everywhere. Water starts to boil, onions hit the pan. Recipe of the week, let the feast begin. Cooking with Chef Scott, flavors come alive. Tune in every week for a tasty bite.
Hi, it's Scott here with this week's recipe, and this week we have a very simple one, confit elephant garlic. Now confit is a French cooking method where meat is slow cooked in its own fat to preserve it, but here we will be applying this method to garlic using olive oil to end up with beautifully soft, spreadable cloves of elephant garlic that are beautiful on a bit of toast or used in cooking to add depth of flavour to things like bolognese. You could also use actual garlic, and this would give a stronger garlic flavour but still mellow at the same time. So, let's head to the kitchen and hear how it's made. As usual, you can find this recipe and others on the veggrowerpodcast.co.uk and on my Instagram page, seed2table plot 13. For this recipe, you will need peeled elephant garlic cloves, a few sprigs of rosemary, a good olive oil and flaky sea salt. Method: place the garlic cloves in a tight-fitting oven dish. You want the garlic to be packed in. Now add the rosemary and olive oil so the garlic is completely covered in the olive oil. Now bake in a preheated oven set at 120 degrees Celsius for 2 hours or until completely tender. Then allow to cool and store in the fridge for up to 2 weeks. And enjoy! And that's the recipe done, and that's it from me this week.
Well, once again, that is another very delicious sounding recipe from Chef Scott there. And one thing I've got to say is I have got a lot of garlic at the moment that I've harvested. A lot of garlic, both grown on the allotment and here at home. And I've got so much garlic that I was wondering what I was going to do with it. I was going to make a lot of easy garlic, which is something I regularly do anyway. But I'm also going to do this confit of garlic as well because it sounds brilliant. Thank you so much once again to the fantastic Chef Scott. Now, I've been having a few conversations with a lot of people lately, including Chef Scott, funnily enough. And there's a lot of conversation going on that people are really struggling to find time for their allotment. And it's understandable because here we are, the beginning of summer, the beginning of July, and it feels like everything is on top of us. We have had one of the driest years that I can remember, which is on top of last year being one of the wettest years that I can remember. And it has been so dry that keeping up with the watering has been a regular job. But not only that, keeping up with the weeds, keeping up with family life as well. And sometimes when you finish work, you are just so tired. The last thing you want to do is go to the allotment. And I have to admit, I am finding myself this year in that very same circumstance. I love my allotment. I'm down there as regularly as I can get. And I am trying to visit the allotment pretty much every day. But in all honesty, to find time on the weekend, these last few weeks in particular, has been a struggle. But am I worried? In all honesty, no, I'm not. And let me explain why. Now, I feel the allotment is meant to look after itself to a certain extent anyway. Yes, we have a lot of weeds, particularly couch grass on the allotment. But I have set it up in a way that it is there to look after itself. I'm not so worried about aesthetics as such on the allotment, which is why I use things like the straw mulch, grass clippings, etc., which really do help keep everything in control. I'm not saying it's a complete cure, but it certainly reduces the amount of watering I have to do and the amount of weeding. And in fact, I am finding the straw to be such a good use that I am going to be using it a lot in the future. That is until we can produce enough compost. Now, one of the key things that I'm noticing a lot of people are struggling with is the amount of watering that people are doing. It is a lot of time spent watering because the thing is, when you have a vegetable garden, you need to water properly. And I've spoken about this many times in the past, this year particularly, that sometimes when you just scatter in a bit of water, it's not enough. You need to give the ground a good soak. What I like to do is I like to take my finger and push it into the ground. And if I can go up to the second knuckle and it feels damp, then I know we have water in the soil. What you got to remember with plants, the roots will go down in search of water. So what that means is that I don't have to water my vegetable garden every day. I might water certain beds once a week, but give it a really good, thorough drink. And what I'm finding with the allotments, the beds down there with the straw mulch, they're needing less than that. They are surviving in the hot weather a lot better than anywhere else. As you know, I'm a big fan of mulching, so for me, the mulch has made all the difference. Now, where I do concentrate my watering on is newly planted plants or newly sown seeds. For example, we've been sowing some carrots and beetroots and radishes quite regularly at the moment. Those will need watering every day for the first couple of weeks, especially while waiting for those to germinate so that they can establish. The roots on those are going to be very, very young, very, very short when they first grow. But once they are growing, and those roots will grow down in search of water, you will find that if you don't water daily, they will actually grow bigger, longer roots, which leads to stronger plants. Now, that is only one part of why people feel overwhelmed. I think watering is a big part this year, but there are a lot of other things that get in the way. As I said, weeding is one of those jobs that does take a lot of time. Nobody likes weeding, but it does take a lot of time. One of the biggest tips that I've learned when it comes to weeding is little and often. So as I've said, daily trips to the allotment, even if it's just 15 minutes, just dedicated to pulling a few weeds out. In next to no time, you will have the allotment back under control and it will look a lot better for it. Doesn't take long at all. Other jobs, of course, cutting the grass if you have grass areas. Well, I do that on a weekly basis. At the moment, because it is so dry, I'm just setting my lawn mower blades a little higher than I would normally do. That way, it just stops the grass from growing brown. The thing is, at the moment, grass isn't exactly growing fast, but once it gets a bit of moisture, it will soon shoot back. Again, that's a weekly job, and I dedicate every Thursday evening on the way home to doing that job. But trust me, when it is hot, it's not a job I really want to do. So it can wait. Is it important? I don't think it is, as long as it gets done at some point within a couple of weeks. Now, other than that, when people feel overwhelmed, it's often because they feel there is too much to do and they don't know where to start, or they don't feel they have the time. This is where I have found myself being organised has helped. So at the beginning of every week, I will sit down and write a to-do list of everything I want to do here in the vegetable garden and on the allotment. And I generally focus on just one job a day. So Mondays, because I have the podcast to put out, I generally reduce that down just to do a bit of weeding in both gardens. But on tomorrow, for example, I've got a list of seeds that I'm going to sow in the morning. These are going to be kale and cauliflowers and things like that. And then down on the allotment, I've got to sow some more carrot seeds. And it follows on right through, just one job a day, and it gets ticked off the list. As long as it's a quick job anyway, that works. Come the weekend when I have a bit more time, that's when I can focus on the larger jobs. So it may be with my new shed being built, I may build a new potting bench or something like that. Who knows? We will find out next week, of course. So the point I'm trying to raise here is that sometimes overwhelmed happens to the best of us. We all feel like we got too much. We all lead busy lives. Things get in the way, health, those sort of things are all considerations we have to take. But don't panic. Don't panic. Just give yourself 5 minutes, have a drink, have a cup of coffee, and just think about what you actually want to achieve and what you need to focus on, and then go from there. For me, the power to-do lists is a big thing. And if you can prioritize your jobs in what's most important to what's least important, it helps focus the mind. And I often find that deals with feeling overwhelmed. Now, one of the big things that I do tend to do as well is I like to use natural methods for pest control. This includes companion planting, encouraging birds and chickens, etc., etc. And I bring this up because Thompson & Morgan have released a blog post today in which I have contributed along with a collection of other social media gardeners. Highly recommend. I've added a link in the show notes to this page. But if you are looking for ways of naturally controlling pests, then I highly recommend you go check out this article from Thompson & Morgan. It's a really good read, well worth checking out and picking up a few tips. As you know, I'm a big fan of using natural methods where I can and encouraging wildlife, encouraging birds, encouraging companion planting is something that I believe we should do. Well, that is coming up to the end of this week's podcast. I hope you've enjoyed it. If you have, then please do leave us a rate and review on your podcast provider. It doesn't cost you anything and it only takes you a few seconds, but it means well to us. It helps us get found by more people who might be interested in growing their own food. It gets the algorithms working for us. Now, we have had a review over on Spotify from Annabelle Harpyscod. And she says, really enjoy all episodes of the Veg Grower Podcast and Chef Scott's recipes. Inspired idea to include seasonal recipes and inspire growing the ingredients. Brilliant. Thank you. Thank you, Annabelle, for that comment. It really does bring it back to why I started the podcast. I believe everybody should be growing their own food in one way or another and what they can. And to do that, we need to encourage, we need to inspire, and we need recipes that bring everything that we grow to life and make it all the worthwhile. So thank you, Annabelle, for that bit of feedback. You can do the same. Just head to whatever platform you are on and leave us a comment. Really appreciate it. Also, if you've enjoyed this podcast, you want to help support the work that we do, then please consider becoming a member of the Veg Grower Podcast Supporters Club. Just £5 a month to be a member and you get access to extra behind-the-scenes podcasts and your monthly seed pack. If you want to get in touch, my email address is, of course, richard@veggrowerpodcast.co.uk, or you can visit our website, theveggrowerpodcast.co.uk, where you can leave us a blog post or you can leave us a voicemail. And of course, you can find me on social media. I think that just about covers everything. With that, thank you so much for joining me. We will be back again next time. So until then, please take care.